Yeah.
Pete, you done any fat biking?
Just say like,
I have, yeah. Awesome. I have, Tyler and I have talked about that. I had one for like 2 years, and I just like, I don't know. I was surprised. I assumed that I would love any kind of cycling, like, and it wouldn't really matter. That I would find that I liked it. But I tried. I spent lots of time on it to see if I could like kind of catch the bug. And I actually don't particularly like it. It's like it's partly trails for sure, because like you want like a certain kind of snow, it seems to me, like on it, that makes it more fun. And like the snow can be like super erratic with like within the city. I'm probably not going to like drive out to trails to fat bike. That doesn't, I don't see that being realistic either. Like I don't like it that much. It's certainly not mountain biking to me. So yeah, I don't know. It didn't really catch on for me. I can run as fast as I can fat bike usually. I just didn't like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Didn't do it. But Tyler, you like it, and you've been on some massive like adventures on your fat bike too, right?
I've been out once this year. I got out last weekend. Yeah, it kicked my butt big time. You know, just trying to balance on that on the hard pack trail. It's like a white ribbon, because if you fall off the white ribbon, you go down into the deep snow, and so it teaches you really how to be like efficient riding in a straight line. But as you get tired, you start weaving a little bit and you go off. It's hard. It kicked my butt last weekend, big time. I came home and was just a zombie. Yeah. But it's good for you. It's good for your scales. You know, it's maybe not for everyone, but I don't know. Here in Missoula, it's like, it seems like it's winter for 6 months. So
you're having the right.
It's a nice, it's a nice option to have. You know, maybe once every week or 2 weeks. Yeah. Some people go out every day at night. I have friends that go out at night, have the great lights, and they enjoy it. Yeah.
Me too. There's groups here that you can join and just like go get out fat biking, and we have like massive infrastructure for cycling here in big urban parks and stuff. It just, I don't know. I've resorted to winter for me is like Zwift and running. But if I'm outside, I'm running, and if I'm cycling, I'm on Zwift for the most part, unless I go to Hawaii.
And how's that going?
Zwift and running.
Yeah, just your winter training routine.
We all got like knocked out pretty hard. I actually wanted to talk to you guys about this on the podcast. I don't know if it was influenza or if it was that other respiratory thing that's been going around. I don't know if that's happening in your guys' communities, but it has just been like ravaging our school, like 30% absent rates and stuff. It's just been brutal. And we all got it like 3 weeks ago. And we're like still not quite right. Like even from an energy perspective, like I'm back to putting in like harder efforts, but like I don't think I rode for 2 days, which is really rare for me. That means I feel really shitty. And then when I did, I was like, my heart rate elevated right away, and I was like hardly doing any watts, and I was like not okay. So I took it super easy for a couple of weeks, and I'm just kind of starting to throw down a little bit again, but it's like long, slow recovery. So, and I've got big goals for next year. So maybe the timing's kind of good. Like we were just talking to Carter Newsteg last week, and he said that he got COVID. Like we didn't have COVID, we all tested for it, but COVID probably would have been easier because we've been so thoroughly vaccinated, right? Where whatever this was, we were not prepared for it. But yeah, maybe a little forced rest. Maybe it's not the worst thing to have me like, it's maybe the timing's good. Heading into the holidays, I've actually got a little bit of time off over the holidays from work, and maybe I can kind of not totally put my feet up, but take a foot off the gas a little bit and prepare for January, and then hit it hard.
Hey, Jim, you want to tell them about forced rest?
Hey, you know what? It always happens. Rest in the end, rest is always going to win, Peter. So, and it's happened to both Ty and me probably too many times, but we like rest to be scheduled, right? We like to schedule it, or else forced rest happens. You either get sick, injured, burnout, all of the above. So. But
is it fair for me to consider going from like 10 hours a week to 6 and taking off the intensity? Like, does that count as rest? Because like in my mind, I feel like I'm resting when I'm doing that. Or do you mean like don't do anything?
No, I think it depends on the person. Like, you know, you're somebody that that does big volume. You've done Everesting, that type of stuff. So I think that when you're essentially cutting your training in half, that's restful for this time of year. We still like people to get like a rest week, where you don't go from 100 to absolutely 0. It's not like you sleep in till noon every day, but really a good week where you're at the minimum doing a different type of activity. If you're purely cycling during the season, then maybe, don't get on the bike for, that week. Get out, hike a little bit, walk, go swim, but keep it restful in general. So a good week of that is good. But no, I think what you're doing is in line with what you should be. Don't stress about next season's goals as far as your training being shorter this time of year. That's where it should be. Another thing, since you bring up the respiratory stuff, a kind of a rule of thumb that we always tell clients, sometimes more than they want to hear, is that if the congestion is below the neck, i.e. if you have chest congestion, don't ride. You need to be off the bike. But if you have a head cold and you can tolerate it, you can ride it if you want to. You don't have to, but like when it's chest congestion, you need time off. You're gonna make it worse, or it's just gonna be counterproductive at best. That's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, and I know it's just
don't worry about riding in a lower intensity, until you start feeling better, right? Just turn the pedals over, and then you'll start feeling better. Eventually you'll start feeling better, and then you can start pushing a little bit, and that's when you let Jim know, like, okay, it's time to start with some interval work again, or whatever you're doing. So, but take it easy. You're riding hard all year long, so if you want to take a week off the bike, just take a week off. Like, it's not a big deal this time of year, for sure.
I took one week off the bike this year, like one full week off the bike.
Yeah.
But I ran like 50K that week, so I, like, I'm not the world's greatest wrestler.
I used to take a month off the bike during like the prime of my career. Yep. But no riding.
You trusted the science that was the right thing to do, right? Where I'm like, being a little burned out costs me 10 watts. I'm not, like, I'd kind of rather keep active, which maybe is not the best way to look at it. But I'm, I don't know. I have a maybe this will resonate with some people, but like I have a innate fear that I'll like lose something, right? Even if it's just a habit. I'm not even talking about, like, I know the science that there's, like, I know that I won't lose fitness. In fact, I could gain fitness if I did that. But I'm worried about kind of like losing that forward momentum, right?
That's a common theme. I think people get some anxiety about, oh boy, they think there's this, it's kind of a misconception that fitness is a one and done. Like, you lose it and it never comes back, but it's peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys. But I always tell that anecdote about Tyler. Part of his plan was always taking a month off. I always remind people of that. But then on the counter to that, I think, is that we as coaches have to remember that a lot of our clientele, a big part of it's just your mental well-being. You feel good when you're getting out and exercising. So, for someone like Tyler that was doing grand tours, and making a living off of cycling, that month off shut it down. It was completely needed. Where for our clientele, it might, that month might be a week off. There's individual differences, but
exactly.
But
right.
I always like when Tyler tells people, I took a month off, because I think there's this conception that, pro cyclists, they just go hard year round nonstop. And if you're not, you're close.
I get that, but like Tyler also needed to take a month off from like the crushing pressure of like results and just even the stress of riding in a peloton and stuff like that, where me or most of the people that listen to this podcast, like, we don't need to escape that, right? This is our escape. So it's like, rather than being like relieved, like, were you excited about the month, Ty? Like when it was coming up, were you like, yes?
I love the first 2 weeks, and I'd start to get nervous for the next like 2 weeks, just because you gain a lot of weight quickly.
Yeah,
that happens. You're you put on your like just back to your like natural muscle. And but yeah, and I'd start maybe, you know, doing a little bit of exercise weeks 3 and 4, a little bit of running. Usually I'd injure myself running, you know, every year.
Just like an annual tradition.
Annual
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then core work, some weightlifting. Yeah. Maybe a little bit of that. But in general, yeah, a week off, a month off the bike. The last, probably the last kind of 5 years of my career, 6 years of my career. Yeah. So yeah, so don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, Pete. Don't worry about, you know, losing a little fitness. It's good. It's good. Come down, then you know, build up a bigger kind of pyramid, right? Start a good base, and right. If you ride always with intensity all year long, your peak is way shorter, way shorter. So get out of shape, then build up that pyramid, right, Jim?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. If you're always going hard, you're never really going that hard.
Yeah, you're always like 80, 85%, great,
Yeah.
but like you're never 100%.
Never at your full potential. So Tyler, after your month off, you would get back at the bike. What did that look like? Was it usually like straight into a team camp, or?
Usually, I don't know, 3-4 weeks kind of riding on my own, then a team camp, usually something like that. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be that very fast early on. That's for sure. I take my time to get back into it, and a lot of zone 1 and 2 riding for sure. So yeah, the December training camp could have been, it was a little bit painful sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing when you start to like get to maybe like the pointier end of your potential, how different you can feel by laying off, right? Like you know, it's just like it feels like it's even the way that your body like looks and feels to you can be so different, but to people who like every eat for fitness or that you're in a break, like it would be totally imperceptible to most people. But as you start to get more dialed in, like since I started training with you guys, I was thinking about that before we got on. It's been almost 2 years. And I feel much more tuned into like my body and performance and stuff. So much more. It's way less of a mystery to me than it used to be.
Have you found that as you've advanced and got more fit and, you know, more skilled in different endurance events, cycling and running, that the details become more important? So I always find that as you get stronger or better, more advanced, all the little details are kind of amplified. So hydration, nutrition, you know, stuff that you might have been able to kind of fudge your way through in the past, those all become, you know, amplified, bigger part of success. Have you noticed anything like that?
Definitely. Yeah. Because you're like, basically I've just really increased a lot of volume. So I do a lot more focused training with you guys than I did before. I would do intervals and stuff, but they weren't like sort of leading anywhere. It's just like today I'll do intervals because they're hard and that's got to be good for me, which is true. Yeah. But there's more of an end goal now, right? So even though I'm definitely not the best student and I don't follow every workout to a T, because some it depends on how my life is going. The weather hits and it's an awesome day and I'm going to ride outside that day, then I might receive an email from you with structured work and intervals, and that's going to not happen that day. So I'm not like, I have it to a T, but I've still seen like huge gains. But part of it is just by increasing volume quite a bit. So like I did some math. I did overall like pretty short workouts, like an average of less than an hour and a half. But I've done rides and runs. I've done like 420 cardio workouts this year in like 420 in like 340 days. So like 1.2 a day all year. So pretty damn consistent. But because by trying to train or do something reasonably productive every day, exactly what you're saying, Jim, like those margins matter so much more. Like just even the self-care, right? Like you can't, if you ride 3 times a week, you're not going to get saddle sores. But if you ride every day and you're not taking care of yourself, you're going to get saddle sores. Like nutrition, sleep, diet. And I'm not a monk at all, but but I'm much more aware of what makes me feel how and training, right? Like there's a lots more connect the dots where because if you're trying to push, you notice if something's not quite right, whether that's your guts or your energy or something, and then you can try and figure out backwards, like, well, what did I do the last couple of days that makes me like, why am I not quite there, right? So, like we have a new sponsor on the podcast called Rewire Fitness, and they have a super cool app that I'm just starting to get into that's trying to put a lot of the pieces together of your mental health game, which is another interesting thing. But in 2 years, Jim and I were texting about this, so it's appropriate timing to talk about it on the podcast. But I've seen a 20% increase in my FTP on the bike in 2 years without like certainly not being obsessed with it at all. It's training and consistency and volume. And I've gotten 2 years older in the meantime. But like, if you had told me that 24 months ago, I would have like signed up in a second. I wouldn't have thought that was probably possible. I already thought that I was operating closer to my peak, but man, people's peaks are way higher than they think they are. And now I'm like, well, what if I get that again, another 24 months, right? Like suddenly that would be pretty amazing.
That's great, Pete.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen, for nothing. Like we know you worked hard. We're proud of you.
Well, it's allowed me to do things that I wouldn't have thought were necessarily possible before, right? Like Everesting, for example. Like I couldn't have Everested without being on a proper training program. Not possible. There's probably athletes that are gifted enough to do that. But I think that for most people, you need to be pretty dialed in. So, yeah. And then that was in August of 21. So like I'm mostly just proud of myself for keeping it going after that, because I was worried that it was going to be like this cliff of me like accomplishing that and not being able to keep it going, right? But I've sort of ingrained it more. I've been a really active adult for my whole life, but it's to have taken it up to this level with the level of busyness that I'm at, I think that's probably what I'm more proud of than just to be consistent, right?
Good for you, Pete. That's great. That's great. So what do you have on the docket for 2023?
Funny you should ask. I've been chatting about that with some people. I am planning on doing a really big ride that will probably go through 4 sort of iconic routes through the Western Canadian Rockies. I think we've talked about it a little on the pod before. With a past guest, so we should have him back on, named Laval Saint Germain. It was his idea that we would ride from Jasper, Alberta, down the Icefield Parkway, which you've done before, I think, on an MS Global ride in the past.
Correct. Yeah.
Which it's a total icon. It's amazing.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Between Jasper and Lake Louise. Then from there, I can go into really what is familiar territory to me and to you guys who've both been up there riding with Sasha and I through that part of the world. So we go then from Lake Louise west towards Calgary, but not quite to Calgary. So you could go from Jasper to Calgary in about 400 and change kilometers. But we want to get to just west of Canmore. You can then head south on Highway 40, which takes you into Kananaskis country, which is a provincial park, which then takes you to Highwood Pass, which we've ridden together in June 2019. We went and did Highwood Pass.
Yeah.
And then you can go up, and we did it up and down, but you can actually get to it. You can go up over, and then you're well south of Calgary, sort of in the foothills, and then back to Calgary up that way. That was Laval's idea, and I couldn't say no. I think I have to. That'll be an interesting ride, though. That's going to be around 600K at about 5,000 meters. So there's a lot to figure out there with logistics, which I've said before, I think really becomes fun to me when you start to, it's no longer a physical challenge like trying to ride as fast as you can for 2 hours or something. This becomes a real logistical challenge, right? Like lights and battery packs and all, because we're going to have to ride through the night. So there's a lot to figure out there. So that's going to be hopefully the sort of queen stage of my whole year. But I've been really inspired by Jack Thompson and by Gene Caffrey, who is a podcast listener and a past podcast guest. I think Gene is such a badass because this is a busy family man who's just doing like super incredible stuff. And I was super inspired by his century streak. So What did we say? He did like 73 centuries. Jim, do you remember that number? It was,
I think
Gene,
it was low 80s.
yeah, I think he got into like 85. It was a lot. It was a lot. But both of those guys inspired me too. Absolutely.
so Gene was doing 1 century per week, not average, per week. So he wouldn't miss a week. And he did it for,
every
it was
week.
close to 2 years, 100-mile rides.
On
At
top
minimum,
of,
some of them were way longer than
on top of his regular training. So he would do, some workouts during the week, and then every Saturday or Sunday throw in 100 miles.
So that really fired me up. I've been thinking about how I could do something like that. I can't commit to a week to week because I need to keep a few open for family travel and stuff, right? Like, or even work. So I don't want to put that kind of pressure on myself. I have to figure that out. But I do really want to do something that's related to distance, because when I look at my training, I'm like, I can achieve really great things if I'm keeping it pretty darn level all year. But for me now to take it to another level, to get like the best shape of my life, probably already the best shape of my life, I need to step it up. So I'm kind of thinking I'm going to try and see how many days I can do 100K in the year, kind of with an outside goal of like 100.
Nice.
Great.
So could I do 100 kilometer days in a calendar year? So that's like 2 a week with 2 weeks off, which is a lot. But I think I'm going to try and do that just for my own personal challenge. And it's something that I need to think about for 365, right? Or if there's a week where I think I can do 3 or 4, bank a few and earn myself a week off, like I want to have to think about it in those terms. So I think I'm going to throw in that personal challenge to myself. And then I'd like to figure out some sort of Everesting related challenge. I didn't do one this year yet. I could probably still do a virtual half or something like that, just to say that I got something in the Hall of Fame this year. But obviously Everesting and that whole community has become a big part of my life. So I want to figure something out. So I have a challenge for you two guys, and I'm going to put this out on the Everesting podcast too. I'm not challenging you to do an Everesting. I'm challenging you to help me find a Rome route.
Oh, okay.
So an Everesting Rome is you have to pick a 36-hour period of time. You can sleep. So like a good example would be like, say, 7 a.m. on a Saturday to 7 p.m. on a Sunday, 36 hours. You can sleep in it within that time period if you want to, but you need to clock in 400K and 10,000 meters in whatever format you want. So when I look at it, I've spent more time than I would like to admit looking at Google Maps around me, trying to think of how I could put that together. The only way that I could really do it is to either do a ton of repeats in one place, so basically another Everesting, or move around and do multiple repeats on multiple hills. But I have to be honest, that just sounds like a physical challenge. It doesn't sound like an adventure to me. And I think I need it to be more of an adventure to get like really inspired to kind of put it together. Because it's a big commitment. I got to take time off. I've got to like leave. I've got, like it's not nothing. My weekends aren't all wide open, right? They're all basically booked up. So it takes some real rage in my life. And to just go out and bang out repeats feels like, I don't know. It's not stirring my soul the way that I used to.
Let's find you one big loop to do where you do an Everesting. That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
So
we'll help you find it.
I need the help from you guys and from the community. Somebody find me a loop or a really cool out and back. Like if you could do 5,000 meters and 200 to 250K one direction, that was awesome, and then back. That would work too. That's an adventure. But I just can't just go do aimless repeats. It just is like I would only be doing it to do it, not to. It wouldn't be its own, right?
So
we'll come up with something.
You want to kind of home base from Calgary, from home, correct?
Well, no, actually, I'd like to open up the conversation because I'm willing to travel, but I can't necessarily guarantee when I could do it. But if you guys found something in the Montana or the Pacific Northwest areas, I'm interested. I'm listening. Western Canada, listening. But even if somebody's in Europe and they listen to the podcast and they have a crazy route that's a loop that would just melt my brain, definitely more opportunities to do this in Europe than there are in North America, just because of the way we've built roads. still hit me up, because I'd still love to see it and just have a cool conversation about roams in general, because a teeny tiny percentage of people who've done Everestings have done roams, probably because the logistics are much harder. But it's a way more romantic notion to me to head out for a 36-hour time trial to see if I could do it, rather than just doing repeats, right? But I need the proof. So I'm appealing to all of the map nerds out there to help me find something that I can maybe try.
That'll be a fun. We'll find something for you. You know, Pete, it's funny.
We'll get you a route. Yeah, we'll get you a route.
It's funny you mentioned Gene Caffrey, and I'm sure he'll probably hear this at one point. But like you said, he was this friend and client of Tyler and I's and yours now, who had the century streak. But Gene has multiple sclerosis, and this time of year, every year, he always reaches out. And he's like, I want to do something epic next year to raise awareness for MS. He's a great spokesman for MS and cycling in general. It's super inspiring. And we were talking the other day, and your name actually came up. He was like, maybe I'll just do a bunch of, like, a big mile a year. And I was kind of like, well, I don't know, how do you define that, and what are you talking about? And so my thought, now this is a lot of pressure on Gene, especially if we mention it on the podcast. So
I love
it's by no way a done deal or anything, but my idea, which I presented to him, is, Gene, what if you do an Everesting? You might be the first person with MS. So that could be really cool if he were actually the first person with MS. And so the conversation was, well, how do I find that out? That's where your name came up. Like, oh, I bet Pete could help us do a little research. So anyhow, Gene, sorry.
Like it.
Already on it. Absolutely. Yeah. Gene, you can count on me to look that up with Andy Van Bergen.
Hey, Pete, I'm glad you mentioned Jack Thompson. How's he doing? Do you have a report on him?
Oh, I didn't look it up today, but he's got to be, he got sick also. It's everywhere. It's in Spain too. He got really sick and knocked him out for close to a week. So that put him back about 20,000 meters. So when he had this little cushion to play with, it got, fuck, man, I feel like we jinxed him when we talked about not getting sick. I feel like an ass. But he's back on track, banged out another Everesting. I think he kept the Everesting streak on track, so he took some time off sort of in between 2 Fridays where he normally does them. But he's like 900 and a bunch thousand meters, so I still think he's going to make it. But we'll keep the posted, because we're on almost to December 10th now.
Yeah, wow,
a little under 3 weeks. But I think he's going to do it. So yeah, the consistent challenges are amazing. So I think Gene should consider an Everesting, or get on Google Maps and consider a roam. Because that
could be his style too. He's got some endurance and mental toughness for sure.
Yeah, hasn't he done? It's like some sort of something like he's done 24-hour race stuff, right? Like on a race.
He does some big endurance events, 12 and 24-hour stuff. Yeah.
So Gene can ride through the night. He'll be fine. I know that he can do it. So yeah, Gene, if you're listening, reach out. I'd love to chat with you about this and see how we can put a plan together. It's no pressure though. Yeah. All right.
Zero pressure.
What? Hey, just before I let you go, what about you two? Anything, Jim? You've been flirting with doing a huge gravel race for a couple of years, but it's been hard to put together with fatherhood and pandemic.
Yeah, the fatherhood and the pandemic have made it challenging, but I'm always up for something. So
okay, keep us posted.